Hey guys, welcome to Gregsbeerreviews today. It's beer 30. Let's go take a walk, see what's in the fridge today. Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by Gregsbeerreviews today. Today's beer comes from Abita Beer. This is Wrought Iron IPA. And the reason I bought this, I have a good friend of mine that used to go by the handle on the CB, I think, of Wrought Iron. Mr. Steve Wiley. I'm going to shout him out in this video because he's a good friend of mine. We ride motorcycles together. Good friend of mine. And when I seen this, I thought of him. I said, Wrought Iron, yeah, I'm going to get this from Mr. Steve. So this is their IPA bottled, and they're out of Abita Springs, Louisiana. I think that's pretty close to New Orleans, somewhere down in that area. I drank a lot of those beers when I did go to New Orleans a couple years ago. This must be a new offering because I didn't see this beer when I was down there before. So I don't know how long they've been doing this particular version of this beer. But I seen it and I said, yeah, pick it up, give it a review and see what we think of it. This is a 6.9%er. I don't have the IBUs listed here, and I don't think it's listed on the bottle anywhere. And I'm not sure they actually date their stuff. But we'll take a closer look when we come back with the final chug. But it's a special bottle. It's got Abita embossed in the bottle itself. So they're getting the bottles made specifically for them. They're not using generic bottles. It says pry off cap here, so you don't spend all your time trying to twist this damn thing off, and it's not going to happen. I'd say, yeah, the commercial description is the same as what's written on the back of the bottle here. And it's easier to read on the tablet here, so instead of me trying to squint or put my glasses on to read it on the bottle. Abita Wrought Iron IPA embodies the resilient, indestructible nature of New Orleans. This pale ale is forged with the intensity of Apollo, Equinox, and Mosaic hops. I'm not sure I've had a lot of beers with Equinox hops. I have had Apollo, and Mosaic hops are awesome. They are. I've had several beers with that hop variety. I don't grow any of these three. Not being able to get my hands on the rhizomes, which is the root that you use to start the hop plants from, since they don't produce seeds. It says brewed with pale ale malt for a golden color as bright as iron from a fiery forge. So maybe that's where they come up with the name. These brewers come up with some pretty intense names and pretty witty names sometimes. So food pairing is an IPA, so it's going to be your typical IPA food pairings. And these are just suggestions, guys. You know, I tell you this all the time. I'm reading this straight off of Beer Advocate's site here. Cuisine is your curry and your ties. Uses a pepper jack, sharp, blue, cheddar. Your more pungent cheese is gorgonzola, limburger, and the meat is poultry, fish, shellfish. And I will add grilled meat to that. Glassware is pint, becker, Nonic, tumbler, stein, mug, Seidel. I'm going to use the Solomon beer glass, my favorite glass, and use it more and more for the beers that I drink. And even when I'm not doing reviews, I like using this glass because it enhances the aromas, the shape of the glass, and it's a real thick glass. It's a pricey glass. I think this glass is about $35, but as thick as the glass is, you don't have to worry about it breaking like the Dogfish Head glass and a lot of those other glasses. It's super thin. I mean, if you look at them wrong, they crack. So I like using this because it's almost indestructible. All right. Only thing else we need to say, this beer is an IPA, so it's not recommended to be cellared. So let's not cellar it any longer and get the cap off of it, get it in the glass, and see what wrought iron is all about. Nice little hiss. Excuse me, into the glass we go. This is a 12-ounce bottle. Super aggressive pour there, which gave us that massive head. About 2 fingers of head on that pour. And I'm getting some citrusy notes already from that pour. Smelling pretty good already. Over to the light, it is pretty cloudy, guys. I can see a little light through it, but I cannot see the bulb whatsoever. So this may be either a bottle conditioned or an unfiltered beer. Got a few bubbles streaming up, reinforcing that head, but it is pretty cloudy. Nice tangerine orange color. Looks pretty good. A lot of soapy like bubbles on the side. They're pretty big, but a nice creamy head on the center of it there. Well, let's get a nose on this one. The guy's from Abita Beer out of Louisiana. Very citrusy. Now, a lot of your IPAs are going to have that citrusy notes. And this one does too. Very citrusy. Just a slight hint of some pine. It's not your typical West Coast style where the pine and the grapefruit is just off the chain, guys. It's not that. To me, it's more like an East Coast style. I am getting some tangerine oranges or maybe some lighter fruit in there, apples or pears. Nice sweet smell. Wonderful aroma from these guys. And a lot of these breweries don't do the off-the-chain beers where everything is just up in your face. A lot of them like to subdue that just a little bit, so the transitional beer drinkers, the people that's trying to get out of the pale ales and into the IPAs, it doesn't blow their palate out of their mouth. I mean, if somebody was to try to go from a typical pale ale, which is not very hoppy usually, into something like a Stone Enjoy By or something like that, which is, I mean, almost off the chain as far as West Coast style, grapefruit, pine, and all that. It's just going to be too much for their palate to handle usually right off the bat. You work your way into that. I mean, if I'd have tried something like that, like a Stone Enjoy By when I first got into reviewing beers, I would have probably gave it a C or a D. It would have been overload for my palate. But now that I've been doing 1,680 some beer reviews, you work your way into those bigger beers and stronger beers. So that's how it goes. I mean, it's just like going from Kool-Aid to Jack Daniels. I mean, sometimes it's that drastic of a change in a taste. You're going to say, ooh, but as you work your way into it, it becomes palatable and more enjoyable. So that's why beers are. The bigger the beers and the stronger the beers are, the more you have to work your way into them to be enjoyable. You wouldn't want to go from Budweiser, Miller, or Coors to something like that. I mean, it's just going to be palate overload. So, well, I flattened my gums long enough, don't you think? About a finger of head left. Let's give it a taste. Cheers, everybody. Just as I suspected. A great entry-level IPA where you're not going to have that super palate overload from being a West Coast style where the hops are just off the chain, guys. I mean, the grapefruit and the pine and the pineapple is just very nice, though. Very citrusy. Very easy drinking, no alcohol taste at all. A great entry-level IPA in my opinion. Very well made. Nice balance between the sweetness and the bitterness on the back end from the hops. Wow. Very delicious. This may be my favorite one. I've had Turbo Dog and several other ones, but this is the first time having the wrought iron. Very nice. Very, very nice. To me, at this stage where my palate is, this is a great transitional beer. If you've gone from the the macros into maybe a Hefeweizen or maybe a lighter lager that's craft made, and maybe tried a couple of pale ales, and you wanted to get into something to the next stage, into an IPA, this would be a good one to start off with. Still might be a little too bitter because, like I said, I don't have the IBUs listed here for this beer. It's not on the bottle, and it's not here on either one of the sites I have here. But if I was guessing, I would say this is probably in the 60s as far as IBUs. And that still might be a little heavy. You might even want to start out with something like a 40 or a 50 IBU beer in an IPA, and work your way up into the 60s and 70s, and some of the double IPAs are even over 100 now, as far as IBUs goes. So you don't want to jump in. You don't want to jump in over your head right off the bat. You want to work your way up slowly, and let your palate become accustomed to those bigger, more bitter beers to be appreciated, guys. I mean, you definitely wouldn't want to jump from a macro lager to a double IPA. I mean, it's just gonna, or a stout. I mean, it's just gonna go. And a lot of people are afraid of the dark. When you pour a dark beer, a porter or a stout, they just look at it and go, "I don't want that. It looks like motor oil." So, you know, I get that a lot. I get that a whole lot. Don't be afraid of the dark. It's not going to hurt you. There are a lot of lighter porters, especially your English style, which are around 4 or 5%. It's going to have that caramel, chocolate, coffee taste. It's not going to overwhelm your palate. But if you're going to jump into something like a Marshall Zukov or a KBS or something that's 9, 10, 11, 12%, it's going to bite you. It's going to bite you like a snake. Yow! So you want to work your way up in slowly. So, well, let's let it warm up. It's right out of the fridge, 40 degrees, and see where this one ends up. I'm very impressed with it so far. All right, guys, I'm back. I've been sipping on this about, I don't know, about 45 minutes or so. It's up to room temperature. Very nice beer. Like I said earlier, it's to me, it's like a nice transitional beer. I checked the bottle when I got back here, and it has no date on it. That's the biggest drawback to buying an IPA that doesn't have a date on it. You don't know how old the beer is. So let's do the final chug on this one. Very nice citrusy notes on this. Very nice aroma. Guys, if this had a date on it, I would probably give this an 8, which is an A-, but it has no date, so it gets a 7, a B+. They need to step up to Abita Beer Company is big enough to date their stuff, and they choose not to. So that's a big thumbs down for me on that. But this beer is very tasty. Very nice citrusy notes, a little bit of orange, tangerines going on in here. Very pleasant, very pleasant. I'm fairly sure it's fairly fresh, but there's no way of knowing without that date on the bottle or on the label somewhere. And there's none. I see no evidence of any kind of dating at all. So, an A beer and a B bottle. That's the way I'm looking at it. So, I'm gonna give it to 7, which is a B+. If they step up to the plate and start dating their stuff, they might get a little bit better grade from me. Over to Beer Advocate. Beer Advocate is 88. That's about where I would put it, somewhere 88, 89, somewhere in that area on this beer, since it has no date. And over to Beer Advocate, they give it a benefit of the doubt. They say 91 overall and 85 in the style. So they need to, Abita is big enough, they've been brewing beers long enough to know they needed to date their IPAs. So that's where I'm going to leave it. B+ for me on this one. A nice transitional beer, if you will. To get into some IPAs if you progressed into the pale ales and you want to try something with a little bit more hoppiness and a little bit more bitterness in your style of beer. So that's where I'm going to leave this one. If you've had this one from Abita, let me know what you think of it. This is the Wrought Iron IPA. I did this in tribute to my good friend Mr. Steve Wiley. Mr. Wiley. Alright guys, if you had it, let me know what you think. And let's go see what's in the fridge tomorrow. See you then.